So let's talk about how you get to understanding how you should write the ads and what type of copywriting and imagery and value propositions. So step one, before you start writing your ads, this is kind of a perspective shift for the market. Historically speaking, or traditionally speaking, the way schools would market themselves is to write down how they think people should, or what people want to know about the school. Oftentimes, you will see websites and advertisements that are sort of going very into detail about what makes the school different, especially with Montessori schools. It's talking a lot about the Montessori method and getting into Montessori lingo, and that information is incredibly important to share with prospective parents at a different stage. So what you want to be doing first and foremost, to understand what needs to be communicated to prospective parents at the point at which you're just initially engaging them and trying to make them aware that you have a school that they should come and learn about, the first step you need to do is go to existing parents that are enrolled in the school and identify the ones that you see as your favorite parents, the ones that are the most ideal fit, the parents that you wish you could clone. This should not be all of your parents, and also you don't want to survey all your parents because you'll probably get just too much information to actually, be productive with. So I would say try to survey 5 to 10 parents in your school that are, again, that you would identify, you and your staff would identify as, the ideal fit for the school. You want to ask them certain questions that elicit a long form response that gets them to talk about what they value about your school in their own words. You don't want to be leading them towards any certain types of particular language or value propositions. Let them give you that language, because that is the best way. That language that they use, you want to take it and you want to place that in your ads. And you want to place that on your website, because what we see across the board running many different marketing campaigns for Montessori schools is that more or less everyone's looking, Montessori parents are looking for the same value propositions. But how an ideal fit for a Montessori school, how a prospective parent in New York would talk about those value propositions would be different than how somebody in Utah would talk about them, or how somebody in Texas, or how somebody in Silicon Valley. So because we've been, at Hubley, and me personally, we've been running many different campaigns for schools. We've seen that across the board, even across different countries, across Canada. The value propositions are pretty consistent as far as what drives the right families into the school for a tour. But again, we have to be conscious of how people in that neighborhood would talk about them, because you want to be speaking to the market. You want to, much like Montessori method is about following the child, it's very similar here. The best kind of marketing, the best practice for marketing is to follow the market, understand what they want, how they talk about it, and as long as you have something that matches what they're looking for, you want to use their own language, and you want to use that to engage them, because that's how they respond, that's just what speaks to them. That's what will get more people that are the right fit for your school clicking on your ads, and then going through the different stages of your process from, filling out an inquiry form, scheduling a tour, or signing up to attend an open house. All of that stuff can happen through a digital process. So once you collect all of these different value propositions, the job isn't done. So what you want to do is take the different bits of language and value propositions, and you want to use it word for word. Just copy and paste this text. It sounds crazy, but that's really the best way to do it. And then you want to test multiple versions of all of those different ideas and value propositions that you're collecting from your parents. So the way you test it in Facebook, so step one, grab all of these ideas from your parents. Step two is you want to make multiple versions of the ads. So when you're running ads, and this is what's so amazing about Facebook ads, you can run as many ads as you want at the same time. So you want to, just so you know, as a side point, you can only run so many ads according to how much money you have to spend. So just as a general rule of thumb, when you go into Facebook, you're going to set like a daily budget. So you have to know how much you're willing to spend on a daily basis to run and test the campaign and optimize its performance. As a rule of thumb, you want to have $2 per ad per day in your budget, a minimum of $2. You also want to try to make sure that the target audience that you're going to display these ads to has at least 100,000 people, addressable people. And sometimes it's more important to have 100,000 than it is to have the exact demographics that match your profile. So there's a bit of an art and a science to working with the Facebook algorithms that optimize the campaign for you. So it's a combination of, knowing how to test different variables and knowing what to test, which, you're going to be gathering that information from your prospective parents, and then also giving Facebook enough of a sample size to run that test and get enough data so that it can optimize the campaign for you. And you want to be testing all parts of the ad. So what does an ad campaign consist of? So first, you've got an ad. And that ad, and what we're talking about is an inquiry generating campaign for a Montessori school. So the way you want to set that up, as opposed to another kind of campaign for another kind of business, there's 100 different ways to use Facebook. And this is why you need to make sure you're working with an expert. Really easy to do this the wrong way. So on a high level, you've got an ad, and in that ad, you've got a headline, you've got an ad body. This is like the copywriting of the ad. You've got the ability to input images or videos, and then you have a call to action and a link that the ad goes to. So when somebody clicks on that ad, they're going to go to what's called a landing page. Now that landing page is it's a web page. But it's a web page that has very specific design rules to it. So that web page, there's a lot that goes into understanding how to design a landing page. But the number one rule is that a landing page has to have just one action that user can take. So generally speaking, when somebody clicks on the ad, then they go to that landing page, you want them to fill out an inquiry form where they're giving you their contact information. And the most common value proposition for them to fill out that form is that's going to get them into the process of learning more about the school. So there's not just one way to do this. Some schools will allow them to get a info pack after they opt in. Some of them will just send them directly to a tour booking page. Some schools just want to collect that information and then call that person initially before they move on. You have to figure out what's right for your school. There's a few different standard scenarios. And a lot of that comes down to who's on your team, where are your skills. If you're really good with talking to prospective parents and getting them to come in for a tour, ultimately, the job of this part of your marketing strategy is to convince the right prospective parents to come into the school to attend a tour. At that point, schools generally sell themselves. Usually schools, what we see is about a 75% average enrollment rate once the prospective parent gets into the school for a tour or an open house, that's where the magic happens. That's where they see amazing things. That's where they interact with you and your team and see your passion. That's where they it kind of clicks. They understand now what this Montessori thing is all about, because they're hearing it, they're seeing it, they're even smelling it, and they're touching it. And it's a full body experience, and that's really what it needs for people to really deeply understand how it's different than other types of schools. So get people into the school. That's what it's all about. So now, aside from just using these different stages correctly, you also want to make sure that you're tracking the right metrics. So usually when I talk to Montessori directors or owners or directors of admission, I usually always ask them how much they currently spend to generate an inquiry. This is important information. Usually people don't know how much what their cost per inquiry is. That is the critical metric for tracking the performance of an enrollment marketing campaign. Because at that point, once you know how much you're spending per inquiry, then you can also track your ratio, your performance of getting how many inquiries it takes to equal an enrollment. So let's say usually what we're seeing from Facebook ads, it's about 10 inquiries per enrollment. All right, so let's say you're spending $10, your campaign is running, you're generating inquiries for $10 an inquiry, then obviously if you have an average conversion rate of 10% from the stage of inquiry, so you're paying $100 per enrollment, which is pretty good considering the average enrollment is about $10,000 a year. So to spend $100 to make $10,000 revenue that's a very solid marketing strategy. And even on top of that, students on average will stay at a school for, let's say, depending on the length of your program, 3 years. So really that's $100 to generate $30,000 revenue. That's if you can show that consistently and you understand that's your cost per inquiry and your cost per enrollment, then you're in a position to make very, very informed marketing budget decisions going forward. When I ask schools how much they are budgeting for their market, this is before working with us or before they have worked with an expert, they usually don't know why their budget is, let's say, we budgeted $2,000 for marketing this year. So I asked them, my follow-up question is, why? Why are you spending $2,000? What tells you that that's the right amount to spend? And they don't know. That's just kind of what we've done for the last 10 years. And so if they knew that, okay, it cost me $100 of marketing to equal an enrollment, so if I'm going to spend $2,000, I know I'm going to end up with 20 students. And what if they need 30 students? Well, then that informs them that they should be spending $3,000. And they have a system that actually runs on its own because it's already set up and it's digital, and it just adds, all you have to do is turn on the ad campaign that's already been running, and it sends people right into the school for tours on its own. So that's the type of marketing system that a school needs. And maybe even more importantly, let's say they only need 10 students. So they know at that point that, we only need to budget $1,000 instead of $2,000. So now we know where we can reallocate that extra $1,000 to new programming, fixing the play area, whatever it is. If you want to make really informed spending decisions, you want to make sure you're tracking the performance. So the key metric to track is cost per inquiry. And what's wonderful about Facebook is Facebook gives you this, it's called a tracking code or a tracking pixel. If you place it in the right place on your website, on the landing page and other pages of the website, Facebook, you don't have to do any math. It does all the math for you. It tells you exactly according to how much you're spending, and then it tracks how many people end up inquiring or enrolling. Then It can send you a report right into your email inbox telling you that you're spending $10 per inquiry or $100 per enrollment, and nobody has to sit there and collect all this data, as long as everything is set up the right way initially. So and that just brings me back to making sure that you're working with an expert. There's two sides to making this work really well. There's the creative side. How do you get the information? What do you want to be saying in the ad? What's the imagery you want to be using? Again, you want to be testing different versions of the ad, different headline ideas, different picture ideas, different call to actions, and different value propositions, because you want to test, let's say, at one time, up to about, depending on your budget, let's say up to 36 to 50 ads. And very quickly, if you have enough budget to run that many ads, then you can very quickly see which ads are working well. You turn off the ads that aren't, and then you just keep on running the good ads, the ones that are converting more inquiries. So there's the creative side and the technical side, because to know how to set everything up and be tracking the right way does take somebody with some technical knowledge of how to use the platform, how to add the code to the website the right way, and also how to test and redesign multiple versions of the landing page as well, because you also need to test versions of that. That has just as much effect on the performance of the campaign. So again, testing is super important. You can also test different targeting strategies. Sometimes that's that can have the most impact on the campaign. Is how are you targeting? What interests are you targeting? Are you going too narrow? Do you need to widen it up a bit? You have to try different things. So I would also say, as any expert that you ever work with should tell you, test one thing at a time. So you want to think of it like building an assembly line. So you get everything going, and then you want to start testing the ads and optimize that. What gets more clicks, right? And then you want to test the targeting strategy and see what gets more clicks and really most importantly, more inquiries. And then you also want to test the landing page. And you want to test these three different things separately, not at the same time, because that's way too much confusion in data. So again, test different versions of the ad, which gets more engagement and more inquiries. Test different targeting strategies, and then test the landing page. And when you run through those, you'll be tracking the number of inquiries coming in and the cost of inquiry. And obviously, the lower cost per inquiry is the most important metric for you to track. So every time you're testing and trying a different version of the ad or the targeting strategy or the landing page, then you are looking to see if the cost of the inquiry is going down. And if it is, then you know that the new version that you added to test of each of those components is performing better. Then you turn off the old one and keep the new one. So that's how you do it, very systematically. So work with an expert on the creative side, work with an expert on the technical side, to make sure everything's configured the right way and working optimally, and you'll be in a great position to spend your limited ad dollars in the most efficient way possible, and in a way that creates a system that is now really just an asset that the school has that you can turn on and off at any point in time, rather than having to come back to the drawing board every enrollment season. That's really the last thing you want to do. You want to build a system that will work now and will work 2 years from now, so that when you see, we've got 5 positions opening up because a couple of families moved away or something like that, then you know, okay, well, how much did it cost me to enroll students with this campaign last year? Oh, it was $100 a student. All right, I've got five positions I need to enroll. All right, I'm going to put $500 into the ad budget, and know I'm going to get 5 students out of it. That's the situation you want to be in, rather than racking your brain and throwing money at a whole bunch of different strategies that you can't track, like I'm going to put a billboard over there and a newsprint over there, and I'm going to, those guys from Yelp called me, I'm going to try that again, but I don't really know how any of this worked. These are the conversations I have every day with school directors and owners. So best thing to do is to avoid all of that, set up a good system, and as it is today, things change. But what I'll tell you from our research, And from using all those different strategies, Facebook has been the highest performing network to generate ideal fit candidates for Montessori schools. And like I said, in 2 years, that might change. Maybe it'll end up being a new network will pop up that's engaging that demographic better with some better ad technology. But as it stands today, hands down, Facebook is the way you want to go. And of course, because everyone's budgets are so limited, you want to make sure that, if you've got, for every dollar you've got to spend, you have to make sure you're using it in the most efficient way possible. So I really do suggest, and I don't work for Facebook, I get no kickback from saying this, every single dollar you have to spend on marketing should be done in Facebook. And of course, that's my opinion from Hubley, from working with many schools, from what I've seen, again, as a completely, I have no business relationship with Facebook at all. I'm just telling you what we see, and I want to make sure that schools are using their resources in the most efficient way so that they can focus, so that leaders at the school can, rather than trying to become a digital marketing expert, can actually focus on the most important thing, which is programming, being in the classroom with the students, and being face-to-face with parents. So in short, focus on Facebook ads, but work with an expert to make sure that everything's happening the right way, and you'll be in a great position to have a wonderful enrollment marketing system that is more or less automated and keeps you with more margin in your day to focus on what you really love doing.